I was granted immortality by the devil. I've created my own hell. It was supposed to be one last wild weekend. Xavier was getting married in the fall to a woman he adored so much it made the rest of us feel uncomfortable. His wedding was in 3 months. The bachelor party was my idea. "You need a reset," I told him over beers. "No planners, no flower arrangements, just us, like old times." Somehow, I convinced the others. We booked a cabin 4 hours out, just north of a nowhere town with a single gas station and spotty cell service. The listing promised fishing, hiking trails, and peaceful isolation. Xavier's fiancée hated it. That made it more appealing. 6 of us in total. Xavier, the groom, nervous, soft-spoken, and too polite to say he didn't want to party. He brought a journal he never let out of his sight and a bottle of scotch he never drank. Eric, his best man, sarcastic, magnetic, and quick to argue. Eric had a history for everything, usually exaggerated, always captivating. Danny, the successful one, finance consultant, fresh from a promotion and a new Rolex. He insisted on bringing steaks and wine that none of us could pronounce. Nate, the wild card, tattooed, impulsive, still living like he was 25 despite pushing 40. He worked out religiously and still called weed a gift from God. Ben, the quiet one, Xavier's older cousin, he didn't talk much, didn't drink much, but he was always the one with the gear, maps, multi-tools, bear spray. None of us remembered inviting him. He just came. And then there was me, the narrator, the ghost of college friendships. Not quite the center, not quite the fringe, just a man with one foot in the past and the other one dragging. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The drive was long and full of forced playlists. We passed through increasingly empty stretches of highway, the trees thickening, the signals fading. It was the kind of road trip where the laughter comes more from memory than the present. The cabin was larger than expected. 3 bedrooms, a loft, and a living room with a fireplace that hadn't been cleaned in a decade. The fridge was already running, the floor creaked with every step, and the windows all faced trees. It felt good. For the first day, we played at being younger. Nate challenged everyone to do a push-up contest and lost spectacularly. Danny grilled steaks and boasted about his investment portfolio until Eric threatened to read his Tinder messages out loud. Xavier sat in the corner, sipping Coke, smiling without speaking much. Ben disappeared for hours on a solo hike and came back muddy and satisfied. That night, we made a fire out back. Eric brought cigars and passed them around like communion. I don't smoke, but I took one. Sometimes that's all friendship is, accepting that you don't need to just stay in orbit. Xavier tried to thank us, but we wouldn't let him. Eric tossed a log on the fire and demanded a round of biggest regrets. Nate made a joke about dating twins. Danny admitted he once stole from a client. Ben just said, pass. When it got cold, we went inside and cracked open the scotch. Somewhere around midnight, the power flickered. Not all at once, it was more of a cough. Lights dimming in pulses. The fridge humming louder. The floor groaning. We joked about ghost stories and power grids and how this always happens in horror movies. When it fully cut out, Nate yelled, "Okay, who summoned the demon?" We lit candles, sat in a circle, told the kind of stories you can only tell when no one's recording. Xavier told us how terrified he was of becoming someone else's husband. Eric admitted he didn't believe in love, only performance. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Danny brought out a portable speaker and started playing old music. Songs from our university days, messy, overplayed, full of echoing reverb and too much emotion. For a moment, it felt like we were 20 again. All of us. Together. Immune to time. That was the last moment I remember feeling safe. Later that night, after most had gone to bed, I stayed up, sitting near the fire, staring at the shadows dancing across the wooden walls. I don't know why I felt the need to stay awake. Maybe I didn't trust the silence. Maybe it was something else. Ben joined me. Sat down without a word. We didn't talk. Just watched the embers cool. After a long silence, he said, "There's a bar, not far from here." "A bar?" "Locals go there," he said. "A strange place, open late." "Ben, we're in the middle of a forest." He didn't respond. I just stood up, walked to the kitchen, and began making coffee, as if he'd said nothing strange at all. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I kept staring at the window, at the trees beyond the glass, and wondered if something was staring back. The next morning, no one mentioned the lights. The generator kicked in at dawn, buzzing like a dying fly, and we chalked the whole thing up to bad wiring. Danny made eggs that tasted like rubber. Nate claimed the silence had reset his chakras. Xavier smiled for the first time in days. The cabin felt like it was breathing again, but I couldn't stop thinking about what Ben had said. A bar, not far from here. I waited until we were alone, just me and him, sitting back on the back porch after lunch, nursing beers that had gone warm in the sun. "Was it a joke?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Nah." "You said there was a bar nearby." "There is." "Then why haven't we gone?" He paused, took a long sip. "Because it's not really a bar." And that should have been enough to stop me. But curiosity is a virus. It grows in the quiet. And that night, when others were bored, half drunk, and talking about playing poker for the 5th time, I brought it up. "There's a bar like 10 minutes from here." Eric raised a brow. "You serious?" Ben mentioned locals only, apparently. Open late. Danny was the first to stand. "Hell yes. Anything better than another round of Nate's playlist." Ben didn't stop us. Didn't even warn us. He just grabbed his coat and keys. The sky was dark by the time we got in the car. The roads were slick with recent rain, and the tires kicked up gravel as we curved down a narrow, unmarked road that didn't exist on GPS. Trees leaned over the path like they were listening. No one spoke during the drive. Then, like it had always been there, we sigh. The hollow. A wooden building leaning into itself, like age had bent its spine. Faint yellow light glowed from its warped windows. The sign above the door looked hand-carved. Its paint faded into illegibility. A single lantern buzzed outside. The glass cracked, casting a halo of sickly light. Ben parked without a word. We hesitated. Xavier said, "You sure this is open?" "I'm not sure of anything," I said, but I opened the door anyway. The inside was warmer than it had any right to be. Too warm. The heat pressed against our skin like hands. It was empty, not just of people, but of time. The furniture looked untouched. The shelves behind the bar were filled with bottles of unfamiliar shapes and colors. There was no music, no bartender. Then the shadows shifted. and he stepped forward. Mr. Black. He didn't come from the back room. He didn't walk in from outside. He was just there. As if we had blinked and reality corrected itself. He was tall, dressed in a dark gray suit, so perfectly pressed it looked stitched into his frame. His shirt was black, no tie. His skin was pale in a way that wasn't sickly, just unfinished. And his smile was small, polite, like he already knew us. "Gentlemen," he said, with a voice that felt like first breath after a funeral. "Welcome to the Hollow." No one spoke. Even Eric seemed struck dumb. Mr. Black gestured to the bar. "Drinks are on the house." Well, we sat. We drank. The bottles were unlabeled, but each drink somehow tasted familiar, like something half-remembered from a dream. Then, without prompt, he spoke again. "You came here expecting a bar, a story, maybe even a scare." He looked at each of us in turn. "But what I offer is a gift." Xavier laughed nervously. "What kind of gift?" Mr. Black smiled. "The kind that changes you." It was Eric who leaned in. "You saying you, grant wishes or something?" "Not wishes," Mr. Black said. "Desires. Wishes are childish. Desires are honest." He reached into his coat and pulled out a deck of cards. Old, worn. He shuffled once and set it down in front of us. "One by one," he said. "Tell me what you want most, and I'll give it to you." Danny scoffed. "And what's the catch?" "There's always a price," Mr. Black replied. "But it is never more than the desire itself." We laughed. What else could we do? Xavier went first. He stared into his drink and murmured, "I want peace of mind." Mr. Black slid an envelope across the bar. "Open when you're ready to forget." Eric leaned back in his chair. "You serious?" "Very serious," Mr. Black said. Next was Nate. "I want strength," he said. "Real strength. Nothing. I want nothing to be able to stop me." Mr. Black produced a small, dull coin. "Swallow it." Without blinking, Nate did as he was told. Danny followed. I want to be rich. Not just wealthy. Rich. Disgustingly rich." A check slid across the bar, already written. Danny picked it up, blinked, then pocketed it. Then it was me. Mr. Black looked at me before I spoke, as if he already knew. I swallowed, feeling the pressure in my chest before I even formed the words. "I don't want to die." The room went quiet. Even the candlelight dimmed. Mr. Black nodded once, slowly. "No punishment," he said, "could match the wish you've already made." He lifted his glass. I lifted mine. And when our drinks touched, something in the back of my mind snapped. Not loudly, like a string stretched too tight, finally giving way. We stayed for a little while longer, or maybe we didn't. Time bent inside the hollow. I remember blinking, and then we were outside again. The bar behind us, the road ahead. Ben never spoke. No one did on the drive back. The cabin was cold and unfamiliar when we returned. By morning, I would wake up and feel different, lighter, heavier, hollowed out. But for now, I just stared at the dark woods outside the window, listening to the branches whisper. It didn't happen all at once. There was no lightning strike, no divine wind, no roaring voice from the sky announcing that I'd stepped outside of time. Just the quiet. That's how it started, with the silence. Back in the city, the noise of life should have welcomed me home. Honking cars, radios through paper-thin walls, Xavier's voice on the phone catching me up on the wedding prep. But everything felt muffled, like I was underwater or behind glass. I figured I was shaken up from my trip, maybe hungover, maybe just tired. But I wasn't tired. That was the second thing. I lay in bed the night after we returned, watching the ceiling fans spin in lazy, lopsided circles. I expected to pass out. We'd driven for hours. My legs were sore. My head was buzzing from leftover liquor. My body was ready to rest. But sleep didn't come. And not in the usual way. Not tossing and turning. Not stress dreams or caffeine jitters. No. I simply didn't sleep. I blinked. The fan spun. Time passed. I was still there. By morning, I wasn't groggy. My muscles didn't ache. I didn't yawn once. I sat up and got dressed, made coffee, not because I needed it, but because the ritual mattered. The world ran on rituals. I tried to shake it off. It was just one night. But then came night 2, then 3. Eventually, I stopped pretending to try. Sleep had become like rain in a drought, something the land still wanted, but forgot how to receive. I went through the motions of life, ate meals, took walks, answered emails, smiled at strangers, all of it. Theater. And somewhere along the way, I stopped getting hungry. I didn't notice it at first. I skipped breakfast one day, forgot lunch the next. By day 10, I realized I hadn't eaten in 48 hours, and I wasn't even hungry. Not even thirsty. I poured myself a glass of water and watched it sit on the counter. The condensation formed. The surface rippled. I didn't drink it. I didn't need to. That's when the fear began. I started to test things. Tiny cuts, a burn from a stovetop, a dropped weight on my foot. Nothing stayed. My skin closed up. Bruises vanished. Pain became a flicker, less than a memory. More like a suggestion. I took notes. I timestamped the last time I felt hungry, the last time I bled, the last time I slept. They all belonged to the same day. The day I touched glasses with Mr. Black. I reached out to the others. Eric didn't respond. Danny texted back once. This money won't stop. It just keeps growing. I gave half to charity and it doubled overnight. My dad died this morning. Then nothing. Nate's Instagram stories stopped. Xavier's wedding site disappeared. Ben was gone. Deleted. Like he'd never even existed. I was alone. Weeks passed. At least I think they were weeks. My perception warped. The sun rose and fell, but it didn't mean anything anymore. My body had no rhythm, no cycle. Just motion. I stopped checking the date. Sometimes I'd walk the city for hours, past the coffee shops, the crosswalks, the buzzing neon signs. People moved like clockwork. They were tired, rushed, laughing, crying. Real. I was other? I tried to lose myself in noise, went to concerts, watched street fights, spent an entire afternoon in Times Square just standing there, breathing in light and movement. Nothing touched me. Nothing could. I tried to feel something, anything. I revisited my childhood home. It had been torn down, replaced by a medical plaza. I drove to a beach I hadn't been to since college. The ocean was grayer than I remembered. I sat in the waves for hours, didn't shiver once. One night, I saw a man get hit by a taxi. He screamed. People screamed. The blood pooled on the asphalt like paint. And I stood there, watching. No panic, no pity, just curiosity. Not for him, for me. Would I ever scream again? Would I even know how? Eventually, I stopped leaving my apartment. My plants withered, my fridge emptied, my calendar flipped. I let it all go. Then the hallucinations began. Or maybe they weren't hallucinations. Maybe they were memories slipping through reality, trying to snap back into place and failing. I started seeing the hollow in my dreams. Not as it was. Twisted. Stretched. The bar had no walls, the endless bottles floating in a black void. Mr. Black stood at the counter, polishing a glass that never shined. Behind him, the windows pulsed like eyes. He never spoke. He just smiled, and I'd wake up with that smile burned into my eyelids, feeling older than the city outside. One morning, I found a note on my door. No envelope, no handwriting, just a scrap of paper with 3 words typed on it. You asked for this. I didn't open my door that day. I just sat by the window and watched the world spin, wondering how long before I stopped pretending to care. I began recording audio logs, not for anyone, just for me. I'd talk for hours, tell stories I remembered, describe food I missed, try to fake laughter. On log 32, I broke down. I sobbed into the mic, not because I was sad, but because it was the only sound I hadn't heard in so long. On log 50, I whispered, I think I've died, but I keep living anyway. By the time I've reached log 70, I'd stopped speaking in English. Just noise, just sound, like trying to mimic humanity from a distance. I was a machine now, a man who couldn't rust. I was in Tokyo when the sun exploded. It had been thousands of years since I stopped counting. Civilizations came and went. Empires rose, fractured, were swallowed by the sea, and born again under new names. I watched religions splinter into new religions, science bloom and die like a flower left in a storm. They called me many things: the undying man, the forgotten god, the anomaly. Some tried to worship me. Others tried to dissect me. I let them. It didn't matter. I had already stopped being a person. Language shifted so many times I forgot how to speak. The stars rearranged themselves. Oceans boiled, reef rose, vanished. And then the warnings began. Astronomers with names I couldn't pronounce discovered what I already felt in my bones. The sun was dying, collapsing, 100 billion years ahead of schedule. as if the universe was growing impatient. They called it the final dawn. I didn't prepare. What was there to prepare for? By then I had lived through everything. Wars, births, plagues, wonders, and silence. I had loved and buried generations. I had watched children grow old, watched their children forget my face. Time no longer meant anything. Still, I felt it. The way the air changed, the way animals scattered, the way the core of the earth itself seemed to shudder beneath me. And then, the sun bloomed. It wasn't a flash. It was a bloom, like something opening its mouth too wide. A corona of light that drowned the sky, swallowed clouds, turned oceans to steam in a breathless instant. The world didn't end with fire. It ended with silence. I didn't die. Of course I didn't. I stood at the edge of a cliff in what had once been Japan, my body peeling under the pressure, skin curling like paper, the heat tearing at my lungs. And yet, I did not die. I screamed, not from pain, but from memory. But the sound didn't carry. There was no one left to hear it. When the earth cracked, I fell into the void. I watched it all happen, slowly, too slowly, like watching a mirror fracture, one hairline crack at a time. Continents peeled apart, the seas turned to mist, skies folded into themselves, the atmosphere burned away, and gravity gave up trying. And I remained, floating, burning, breathing when there was nothing to breathe. I don't know how long I drifted. There is no time and space, just motion and absence. The darkness isn't even black. It's deeper than black. It's a kind of blindness that wraps around you like a second skin. I floated for centuries, millennia, longer than human words can describe. At some point, I stopped feeling anything. Even pain grew bored with me. My body stopped resembling a body. Skin calcified. Hair fell away. Eyes crusted over, and then grew new layers, adapted to nothingness. I couldn't move. I didn't need to. I just was. Sometimes I'd pass fragments, a ring of what used to be Saturn, now shards and dust. Once I drifted through the core of what used to be a moon. I never closed my eyes. They don't close anymore. I saw every star blink out like a candle snuffed in a cave. I saw galaxies stretch and fall apart like dough pulled too thin. The universe got quiet. Not empty, just still. And then one day, I saw something. A flicker. Not of light, not even of movement. Just a presence. A bar in the void. It had no walls, no roof, just a slab of polished black stone floating where physics had long given up. At the far end, a man in a perfect gray suit. Mr. Black. He was exactly as he had been, not a day older, as if the end of all things had politely stepped around him. And me? I drifted toward the counter like a leaf caught in a breathless gravity. I tried to speak, Nothing came. He poured me a drink, set it on the bar. "You look tired," he said, smiling. I tried to laugh. My mouth cracked. Dust spilled out. Mr. Black tilted his head. "You got what you asked for." I nodded. He raised his glass. "To eternity." I didn't lift mine. I simply stared at him. For the first time in an eon, I found my voice, or something like it. It rasped out, brittle and hollow. "Please." He leaned closer. Now, that wasn't our deal." I tried to beg again. He watched me for a long time, or maybe a blink. Then he said, "Perhaps I've changed my mind." A pause that stretched across what felt like universes. Then, "Or perhaps," he whispered, "you haven't suffered enough." And he vanished. The bar vanished. I was alone. Not dead, never dead. Just me, floating, watching the last warmth of the cosmos fade, becoming the last witness, the last regret, the last mistake. Forever.